Despite the world breaking out into another conflict, oil prices, which had averaged over $100 per barrel in 2022, were much lower in 2023, averaging just over $80. Oil prices rose in response to the early October start of the Hamas-Israel conflict, but only momentarily. Less than a month later, prices in the world's most significant oil-producing and oil cargo transit region had lost all of their gains from the increased geopolitical risk. A week before the start of the Hamas-Israel conflict, in late September, the global benchmark crude oil price, Brent Crude, hit its highest level for 2023 at $98 a barrel. Despite growing worries about shipping in the Red Sea and the el-Mandeb Strait as a result of stepped-up attacks by Yemen's Houthi rebels, who are associated with Iran, Brent did not reach similar levels again last year. The OPEC Plus oil output curbs also did not cause oil prices to soar. With the exception of a small spike at the end of September, the market was mostly expecting the cutbacks to continue, and the price of oil was already factored in. Data showing U.S. inventories falling to their lowest level since December 2022 coincided with the surge. According to projections from the U.S. Energy Information Administration, the average price of Brent crude oil was $83 per barrel last year, while the price was $101 per barrel in 2022. This is a $19 per barrel difference after rounding. Moscow redirected its crude supplies to Asian destinations, primarily China and India, and the markets quickly adjusted to the EU and G7 restrictions on Russian oil imports. Global markets adapted to new trade dynamics, with Russian crude oil finding homes outside of the EU, and the demand for crude oil fell short of forecasts globally. These dynamics counteract the effects of supply limitations on crude oil by OPEC+, according to an analysis released by the EA this week. The two main bearish factors influencing oil prices last year were worries about the expansion of the economy and the demand for oil, as well as the higher-than-expected supply from non-OPEC+ producers. The OPEC+ partnership is attempting to maintain strict control over the world oil supply with its most recent announced cuts for the first quarter of 2024. However, the organization must contend with record-breaking U.S. oil output as well as increasing supplies from non-OPEC+ nations including Canada, Guyana, Brazil, and Norway. Although Brazil has previously stated that it will not participate in any production restrictions, it has been invited to join OPEC+, which will begin in January 2024. OPEC+ may not be able to keep oil prices too high, but its goal is to maintain a floor beneath them, at the expense of its market share. According to analysts, this will be particularly true if the organization is unable to continue the cuts into March 2024. The impact of some of the OPEC+ cuts and the increased geopolitical risk in the wake of Iran's deployment of a warship to the Red Sea in the new year are being counterbalanced by the growing non-OPEC+ oil supplies. In a note published on Wednesday, ING strategists Warren Patterson and Eva Manthe stated, "A fairly comfortable oil balance over the first half of 2024 does help to ease some of these worries, even though the geopolitical situation is a concern for the oil market. Unless there is a significant escalation of tensions in the Red Sea and surrounding the Strait of Hormuz, another important oil transit choke point in the Middle East, oil prices are not projected to climb significantly from their current levels this year." The average U.S. benchmark oil price will remain below $80 per barrel in 2024 due to anticipated lackluster global economic growth, according per the monthly Reuters poll. Analysts revised down their 2024 forecasts from the previous month's estimates. According to a Reuters survey of 34 analysts and economists conducted last week, the average price of WTI crude is predicted to be $78.84 per barrel in 2024, down from the November prediction of $80.50 per barrel. The average price of a barrel of Brent crude is currently anticipated to be $82.56, down from the consensus estimate of $84.43 in the November survey. Just one respondent out of 34 in the December study predicted that the average price of Brent crude would be more than $90 per barrel by 2024. According to a new Reuters survey released on Friday, the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries OPEC increased its crude oil production in December, pumping a total of 27.88 million barrels per day. According to the survey, OPEC's output increased by an average of 70,000 barrels per day, BPD. Production rises were observed in Iraq, which is the organization's second largest producer, and Angola, which accounted for 60,000 BPD of the overage. Nigeria had a rise in output as well. Saudi Arabia, the most productive member of the group, suffered a decline in output. OPEC produced 1 million BPD less crude oil in December 2022 even though it increased from November to December. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and its allies, led by Russia, decided to cut their combined crude oil production to about 2.2 million barrels per day at their most recent summit. Once more, Saudi Arabia consented to the biggest cuts. However, there needs to be a little wind-down interval because manufacturing wind-downs are rarely instantaneous. The company may not be able to meet its own prices that are scheduled to take effect in January, as evidenced by the hike in December. Earlier this week, media sources disclosed that OPEC Plus will convene a Joint Ministerial Monitoring Committee, JMMC, meeting in early February to oversee compliance. Angola, which abruptly left OPEC last month, will not be subject to JMMC monitoring. The country's Minister of Natural Resources stated that OPEC no longer aligns with Angola's values and interests. Angola's production quota was reduced from 1.28 million BPD that it was expected to have this year under a previous deal to 1.11 million BPD, as per the most recent agreement reached in November. Based on shipping data from outside sources, Refinitiv Icon data, and information from Petrologistics, PLR, oil firms, OPEC, and consultancies, the Reuters study was conducted. A joint ministerial monitoring committee meeting of OPEC Plus is scheduled for early February, 3 sources said on Tuesday, as reported by the media. Although OPEC Plus normally schedules its JMMC meetings every other month, the group has occasionally scheduled meetings outside of this schedule due to unstable market conditions and member dissatisfaction. This quarter, OPEC Plus members resolved to voluntarily reduce their collective output by 2.2 million BPD. However, a large portion of that amount came from production reductions that were already in place, such as Saudi Arabia's 1 million BPD voluntary cut. While many members of OPEC Plus willingly agreed to reduce their production of crude oil, some, like Angola, were not as pleased with what they were required to produce. Angola chose to leave OPEC shortly after the previous full ministerial meeting on November 30th, alleging the lack of benefits for the African member that had its production quota recently decreased to correspond with real production. The current OPEC Plus production cutbacks are only supposed to run until the end of the current quarter, and since they were only agreed upon on November 30th, it is extremely doubtful that they will be fully implemented on January 1st. That means that if the meeting is scheduled for any time in early February, the JMMC will have, at most, 1 partial month's worth of production data to review. OPEC will have access to more data on crude oil demand over the next few months, which is outside the scope of the JMMC, which is primarily concerned with member compliance. With this data, the organization might decide whether to extend the voluntary production cuts past the first quarter or even terminate them early. The output of U.S. shale oil, which reached a record high last year, has raised concerns about OPEC's ability to maintain market equilibrium. What are your thoughts on Saudi Arabia and OPEC, and do you think they can overthrow the U.S. economy? Let me know down below. If you want to continue to learn about business investing and financial education, we have got this video waiting on the screen for you to check out. Don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe for more videos like this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.